Hello, hello. Today we got 14 different matchups to talk about, 14 different starts. Thursday Night Football's tonight. Then we got the international game, I think London, on Sunday morning, 6:30 a.m. Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. And then two Monday Night Football games again. So love that. But let's start in the international game. Denver versus New York. New York as in the Jets. And my start for this game is going to be J.K. Dobbins. That rushing volume should be the key there. It's a good defensive line. Like, they're not bad. The Jets, pretty solid run defense overall, solid. But the game script is what gets them. So in fantasy, on the ground, they are 26 against running backs this year. So not the greatest because the Jets are 0-5. They're not really helping that defense out too much. And I would expect more of the same for Denver. And the carries, they are growing in favor of J.K. Dobbins. Last week, we had 20 carries for Dobbins, only 4 for Harvey. So as touchdown favorites, I like it for him this week. Judkins is that next guy, Cleveland and Pittsburgh. And if we look at the last 3 weeks, speaking of that volume, week 2, his first game, it was solid volume. It wasn't anything incredible in his first ever game. But these last 3 weeks, he's number 6 among running backs in volume for fantasy. So it's been amazing. The passing volume hasn't been there a ton, but I don't think it'll be a problem like it could be for, say, Denver and New York. This Pittsburgh offense versus the Cleveland defense, it doesn't scream Steelers are going to be putting up 28 points and Judkins is going to be taken out of this game in terms of his opportunities. I think it'll stay a close game. His carries have increased every single game this year. So we're at a point when we get these games where it should be close, even with this Browns offense. Gabriel was okay last week. And when you're getting top 10 RB1 volume, it's worth it. You start him. He's been awesome. Next one up is the Rams versus Baltimore. I would say a must start here. No one on the Ravens, that's for sure. But the must start on the opposite side is Davante Adams. He's been that mid-level wide receiver 2 so far. His volume that he is getting is incredible. The Rams are passing a ton. And yeah, there's some worry of the Baltimore offense kind of letting down this Rams offense in terms of their passing volume. However, they're still 31st against receivers, this Baltimore team, and they are dead last in red zone passing attempts and downfield passing attempts to receivers, which is what Davante Adams has been better than anybody, not just like wide receiver 15 or 16 like he is in points per game, but in terms of his downfield targets and his red zone targets, he is first in both. He's been incredible in those top value targets, and it's what Baltimore has given up more than anybody, and it's usually pretty productive when they do give those up. So I love Davante Adams this week. I have him in my main league with Puka. It's a dynasty league, so I have both. Very excited for this week for those two. Arizona versus Indianapolis. Marvin Harrison Jr. It's a homecoming game in Indy. I'm guessing Marvin Harrison will be there, so it'll be fun for him. And I would say to start him. I like him a lot this week because of the potential volume. And honestly, Kyler Murray might miss this game. I don't know if that's a bad thing for Marvin Harrison Jr. Jacoby Brissett's the backup. So in terms of a backup, pretty solid. If Kyler were to miss this game, I'm not saying I wouldn't start Marv. It might be a positive if Brissett goes in there, at least his volume potential. And that's what I like here. Like last week, amazing game, 100 yards, but only had 5 targets. And that's been kind of the problem. He's been getting good targets. When he does get a target, it's a lot of more valuable ones like I talked about with Davante Adams. The number isn't there though. Still, 5 targets last week. We want that to be higher. But Arizona, they're passing a lot in neutral situations. They're second in that pass rate over expected. And this matchup should allow for more of those neutral situations to be positive situations in terms of passing the ball because Indy, no defense has allowed more pass plays against them than that Colts defense because they're winning a lot of games. People are throwing on them compared to this run defense that they're going against. So 67% of the plays against this Colts defense have been pass plays. It's the most in the NFL. It sets Marvin up for the potential of having like those 8-9 targets games where he can really produce, especially this year in terms of his points per target being a lot better this season. That homecoming game again, I like him this week. I would start Marvin Harrison Jr. Next up, Stefon Diggs in this Patriots-Saints game. I talked about him more than any player this week. I was trying to come up with a different start for this game, but there's not too much. I don't really believe in the Travion Henderson start just yet. The Saints defense hasn't been that bad, and that's what I would point out here too in a positive for Diggs. Sounds weird, but they're only 3-point favorites on the road. So I would expect the problem with this Saints defense is like, oh, the Patriots, they've been so good. Maybe they just blow the Saints team out. It hasn't really happened too much, and they're only 3-point favorites. So I think that could play in favor of Diggs, who if you get more passing attempts, He's getting the volume. These last 2 weeks, he's number one in the NFL in target share. That catchable target rate from Drake May, nearly 90%. Top 5 in the NFL for Stefon Diggs specifically. That chemistry's coming together. And again, that red zone work is there when they get down there. He's that go-to guy. I would not sit him basically in any circumstance. At minimum, he's an incredible flex play if you have like stacked receivers. A more desperate start next is Travis Hunter. A desperate start in the Seattle versus Jacksonville game, and there's a couple factors that play into this. One, he's playing. He's just not being used very well. 74% of the routes last week. That's solid. Like, that is more so your normal wide receiver 2 in an offense. Is he being used correctly? Not necessarily, but there's signs that that could change. Why I would say it's a desperate start. It's not confident, but as a flex, if you need it, he has a ceiling this week. We saw him make lots of plays last week. Seattle this year, they are last against tight ends. Hopefully, that shifts over to more of that slot receiver with Brenton Strange out this game. So they've been allowing a lot of those short receptions and not as much deep. Hopefully we see Travis Hunter, after a good week last week, get more involved rather than just out there running routes for fun. Another factor is Witherspoon, that slot corner on him. They are already 25th against receivers, but partially that is because Witherspoon's been out. And he's still questionable with that knee injury. Didn't practice today, didn't play last week. So who knows if he starts this game. That would obviously help Travis Hunter out too. In some of these matchups, it can be hard to find a start. Never with Dallas. Never with Dallas. Their offense and their defense, the combination, it's hard to just choose one per week. They usually all work. I love Ted McMillan this week. I love Rico Dowdle in a revenge game, especially if Hubbard misses. But the guy I want to talk about is Dak Prescott. As a start this week, one main reason, Carolina can't pressure the quarterback. They're dead last in the NFL in terms of pressure rate. And when Dak is not pressured, what does he do? He throws it downfield to George Pickens, which opens up a lot of those explosive play opportunities we saw last week. That touchdown that he had, 40-yard touchdown to George Pickens, no one was even close to him. He had all the time in the world to throw, and it equaled, like 7 fantasy points one play? 5 fantasy points? Whatever it is, depending on your league scoring. But I like Dak because of that this week. We look at George Pickens, his downfield targets, compared to receivers when their quarterbacks are pressured. So all in the same boat. He's 33rd in those downfield targets when a quarterback is under pressure. But when a quarterback is not under pressure, he's top 3. So he should get those downfield targets against a Carolina defense that does not pressure Dak, or at least we wouldn't expect him to, and a quarterback that has been throwing it short and quick a lot of times in this offense because of that offensive line. So hopefully it pays off this week. Chargers in Miami. Speaking of pressure on the quarterback, RIP Justin Herbert. Tough for him. But we're going Jaylen Waddle. Without Tyreek Hill, it's really hard to sit him. So this is not a matchup start. It's a tough matchup. The Chargers have been amazing against the pass. However, a 27% target share in week 5. He's had that basically throughout his whole career without Tyreek Hill whenever he misses a game or two, his rookie season, when he's just off the field in general. He's just been amazing. In Tua, we'll see if he's healthy. So he needs to be healthy, but multiple touchdowns in 4 straight games. That's hard to pass up for Jaylen Waddle, who's getting the valuable volume. He's getting more targets in general. He's running a lot of routes now. That's the key in this offense. He's the focal point. And that's what's been his problem for so long with this offense. With Jonnu Smith and Tyreek Hill last year and Davante and these other factors where most of that is not there anymore. And Waddle is getting his spot back as that number 1 wideout. And that is an important spot to be in a Miami offense that can produce and gives you that weekly ceiling when you have the opportunity. And he's back to being that first read again. Tennessee versus the Vegas Raiders. A desperate start, but I don't mind it. A flex. Calvin Ridley. We saw his first good game last week. He's getting healthy. Cam Ward settling in a little bit more. And this Raiders defense allows an opportunity for Calvin Ridley. You got Max Crosby to deal with as Cam Ward, but it won't be horrible. They're 19th versus receivers. And a lot of that is just because it's a blowout. The Raiders are 1-4 this year. However, the Titans are worse. So the Raiders, they're 4.5-point favorites. Hopefully that helps out with the Titans, who are right now 6th highest in pass rate. So we'd expect that to continue. We saw 10 targets for Calvin Ridley. And Cam Ward, I talked a lot about in the offseason. Stylistically, great for Calvin Ridley. Gets out of the pocket, throws downfield a ton. Perfect for Calvin Ridley in that way. He's just very Cam Ward dependent. And I think this is a game where if you give Cam Ward a ton of volume, he can give you another game like we saw last week with Calvin Ridley, where he had over 100 receiving yards, and it's a good day, well over 100 receiving yards. 49ers versus Tampa Bay. I wish I recommended this one last week. It's Jake Tonges. In this San Francisco offense, it is very likely that we are not going to see Pearsall. No Jennings would also help here. There's no Kittle. And honestly, the quarterback doesn't matter. It might be better for Tonges. Just have Mac Jones in there again, who gave him 11 targets last week. He's getting the red zone work in this offense since week 2, basically without Kittle this year. He's led the team in red zone routes. He's gotten 3 touchdowns. So the touchdown upside, obviously there. He had a career high 78% of routes last week. And to put that into perspective, that was 5th among tight ends. It's like Tyler Warren, Trey McBride, and a couple other guys in there above Tonges. So he's out on the field running a bunch of routes, and he's playing a defense that is 28th against tight ends this year. When you get 11 targets and you have touchdown upside at tight end, there's not much else to look for. Not much else to look for. Great offense to be a part of. Tight ends are still disgusting. So another desperate one for you, Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce. I don't say to start Travis Kelce too often, but here I don't mind it. A few reasons. One, an interesting case study in this matchup. The Lions, they are dead last when tight ends are split out, either out wide or in the slot this year. When they play their natural true tight end position in line, they're best in the NFL. So go from the best defense to the absolute worst in fantasy in terms of where that tight end is mismatched or lined up and where those mismatches come in. And Kelsey's a guy without Rashee Rice. One more game with it, one more game. Under 40% of his snaps come as that true tight end. So could set up as a more positive matchup than one would think here in a game that is projected for 53 total points. And that volume has been solid without Rashee Rice this year. Season highs and everything last week in prime time, 8 targets, 7 receptions, 61, I think, and a touchdown. So another primetime game. He has a chance to pass Jason Witten for the second most receiving yards ever by a tight end in prime time. So I bet that'll be mentioned on the broadcast. I like it overall for Kelce if you need him. One more game without Rashee Rice in there before he's basically ruined. Monday night, we got 2 great ones. Buffalo in Atlanta. I would go right back to Drake London confidently. 1, he's off the bye. 2, no Mooney, most likely. But even in this matchup, Benford is projected to shadow him. But one thing, honestly, Benford isn't really anything you're too scared of. So he'll be shadowing him, but not a horrible matchup in general. Even so, after they fired the receiver coach, he played a lot more in the slot. And it's hard to shadow a guy that is moving in the slot a lot. In the first 3 games, he was only playing the slot 30% of the time. Week 4, that bumped up to 42%. And it's important for London in terms of his versatility, and he's just really good as a slot receiver when he is used that way. And we like those receivers that are more 50-50 or 60% out wide, 40% in the slot. Last season, he was 2nd in yards per route out of the slot, and he was 7th in targets per route out of the slot. So I like when they use him that way. Hopefully off the bye, it's even better, and Penix starts to play a little more strong. I like it for Drake London overall. And this last one, maybe my favorite game and one of my favorite starts. It's Bill. I think it's time. A lot of the times we are fooled by these type of guys that maybe have a mini breakout like a Woody Marks, and then that next week it kind of reverses course. I think that there's some really good signs that that won't be the case here. 1, JCM is just extremely efficient this year. As a running back, a lot of the times, Trayvon Henderson, we want that fantasy rookie or fantasy player in general that's talented to get more of a role, even though their numbers aren't on the field aren't really showing that they should. That is not the case with Bill. His numbers have been incredible, and he was given 13 of those first 14 carries in terms of his game last week before the end of the fourth quarter where Rodriguez got all 5 of his carries. But he fumbled. He still got 3 carries directly after, all for big gains, like 9, 10, and 15 yards. So they trusted him after the fumble. He was basically getting 100% of that rushing work. And another factor in there, I was worried about Jaden Daniels for some reason in terms of does he keep his rushing volume high with that knee sprain coming back? It was a tough matchup. Is he going to run much? Well, I also forgot to factor in that Jaden Daniels is a psychopath. So, Jaden, it doesn't matter. He can get helicoptered and destroyed in that next carry or that next play. He will take off and run again and initiate contact. He's insane. But it's perfect for JCM because that opens up this matchup even more because that design rate stayed the same. His scramble rate even raised. So the numbers behind that, not just saying that. He ran even more than usual last week off that knee sprain. And when we can set up defenses like that, get that attention on the quarterback and that design running game, those read options, well, it helps the yards before contact and those explosive plays, all that sort of stuff. And this defense, Chicago, we remember that Genty game. They were 32nd this year in yards before contact, something the Commanders are already good at. And they're playing the worst defense in the NFL in terms of yards before contact. It really sets up for lots of explosive plays for JCM. I like it overall. I love the rushing potential here. Given that volume, he'll get some fantasy points. I'm excited about it. Thank you guys for watching. Love this. All 14 starts. We also, new Wednesday video out. That'll be out weekly in your podcast as well. Went over 5 different guys with more buzz going on. So we talk Stefon Diggs, obviously, but also Joe Flacco, that whole situation with the Bengals, the Chargers running backs, Isaiah Bond, and a little bit of Travis Hunter. So check that out too. I really enjoyed it. And thank you guys for watching. See you soon.